Thank you very much, David. We are Optimal Cities, the world's spatial planning companion, and we are addressing a challenging megatrend. So the World Bank estimates that over 70% of the people will live in cities by 2050, and the urban population is accelerating. Every week, we have millions of people working and moving in cities, and the way we are planning it in the future is very challenging. If we look back to how cities evolved and how people use different tools and their perception, they started with very basic tools. They using their memory and their perception to identify where they're placed and how different things are related to each other. And as humanity evolved, they added more tools to be able to plan cities, to understand the reality, and being able also to respond to challenges. Right now, we have a large constellations of data sets coming from satellites, from census, from local authorities as well. However, as cities are becoming more and more complex, planning and managing them is more challenging as well. So the way we're doing planning, the way we are implementing new infrastructure, such as air mobility, needs to align with a much more challenging and costly environmental and planning compliance. We also need to address massive skill gaps in spatial decision making, and also we need to understand how cities can be managed better. So before relying to tech, we need to think about how we can augment the human capabilities to manage this complexity in cities. So we need to ask ourselves how we can augment our observation capacity, our creative and thinking capacity, and deciding and also doing, for instance, using satellites, using robotics, or using artificial intelligence. However, in order to plan cities, you cannot just focus on the human expertise or just on the artificial intelligence or geospatial tools. You need to combine them together. So what happens when you combine them in one single place? Introducing Optimal Cities, our company is focused on making cities that heal, going beyond just having a net zero impact, but actually producing net value in both public and environmental health. And the way we're solving this challenge is by creating very simple and intuitive tools calibrated for specific uses, so planners can analyze, can diagnose, plan, and manage cities at a much faster rate instead of deciding on a lot of guesswork or static technical evidence base. So our system can be applied in many ways. And more recently, we started introducing it in air mobility, how different vertiports, developers, and operators can decide where and how to place their new infrastructure. And our approach is responding to meaningful questions in this changing world and challenging world as well. So we partner with major organizations as well as local authorities and private companies to be able to deliver a unified global system that can solve planning challenges. We've done that with interdisciplinary team with experience both in digital planning and the first digital plans ever made in the UK history, as well as specialists in AI, insurance, and space technology. And improving cities is important, especially as over 60% of our health is influenced by our environments. So where we live, where we work, how we commute is influencing our health tremendously. Poor planning decisions have also multi-trillion consequences. Just from air pollution alone, it's estimated over 7 trillion in socioeconomic costs globally. And just in US, urban sprawl is causing over 1 trillion per year in economic costs. So our system can respond to many questions. However, those questions are scalable questions, are questions that most of the cities in the world require an answer for. So one of the questions is how the cities evolved over time and where they should prioritize nature-based investments or add new infrastructure that can improve public and environmental health outcomes. Another aspect we're looking very carefully is how different interventions can impact health, especially because health and different factors about health are affecting people differently. So what we've done previously with the support of Innovate UK and NHS England, was designing the system looking at different risk factors and how different infrastructure interventions can affect health. Also, our system was used in whole to identify priority areas to improve environmental health and plant and contribute to climate targets. As well as in Camden, we designed a system that using AI to quickly identify what are the clusters of issues, as well as doing climate action strategy monitoring in the City of London. Now, with our participation in the Future of Air Mobility program by Connected Places Catapult and supported by DFT, we are working with Iona drones, with Transport for Greater Manchester and Oxfordshire to pilot our system so they can analyze, prioritize, plan, and monitor the implementation of air mobility. And this is an extremely complicated and challenging challenge, especially as it required not only a very precise calibration of different indicators, but also interactive directly with standard institutions, with local authorities, with aviation authorities to understand how those new pieces of infrastructure can also secure compliance and the planning permission. So going back to the question, what happens when you combine all those three elements together? It's something we call symbiotic wisdom, complementing human domain expertise in planning with a capacity to do remote sensing and understanding additional insights from satellites and wearable data, as well as accelerating the decision-making using geospatial AI. So we can make driving places that can heal. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Phil, if you want to come here, I'll ask you a few questions. If anyone has any questions in the crowd there, if you want to put up your hands. Okay, we have a question there. Oh, no.
I was just saying I've got the microphone.
If you have a question, Alex has got the microphone, he'll be over to you. Silviu, one question I have for you is, you're taking this kind of technology and you're kind of bringing that into kind of air aviation. What are some of the challenges at the moment you see with bringing that into like a trial environment? And what are some of the challenges you've faced so far, and like how are you overcoming those?
Yes, I think one of the biggest challenges is regarding there is no specific or fixed standard that is nationally wide implemented or globally wide implemented. So it's still a process of discovery.
Yeah.
And I think we're in kind of the situation that regulation will follow the technology.
Yeah.
Similar to how we had the planes first, and then the science behind that, and then the regulations for aviation. So I think when it's about that, we're still in kind of boiling situation where things are still not very concrete. So I think it's very important to have this kind of engagement. And the program, such as Future of Air Mobility, is so important because it gives us the chance to interact with Department for Transport, with different authorities, as well as the companies that are actually developing the drones. And
and so see with like in terms of like this being used by like local authorities, there was a session happening in another one of the stages where they're talking about development of like vertiports in certain areas and how that impacts the wider kind of economy in terms of society, economics, and also people being used to drones being in the airspace, for example. So obviously like a lot of your technology is kind of looking at assessing areas for like future flight infrastructure. Like in terms of these like local authorities, it'd be really kind of interesting to know is how can they kind of use this to help them solve some of those challenges? Because a lot of time there is this sense of people, in terms of local communities, people are unsure about new technologies coming in, new innovations, how that changes day-to-day life. But with optimal studies, it seems to cover an awful breadth of impact. So it'd be good to learn a bit more about that and how local authorities can kind of leverage this technology.
Yes, I think very often local authorities, when they see a new proposal or when they see a new piece of infrastructure being proposed, intuitively they kind of know what will be the response to that. But they need to support that with technical evidence base. And very often that technical evidence base supporting a plan or a planning decision requires a lot of time, data, and expert consultancies. And the disadvantage of that very often is what they receive as an output is a report, a PDF or a static document. And that is not integrating the latest fresh information about the place. And places are evolving all the time. So what we are aiming with Optimal Cities is accelerating further decision making, as well as either helping authorities to produce the technical evidence faster, or also supporting those planning consultancies to leverage our tool so they can quickly prepare those reports, or even have that as an interactive form, technical evidence base, where they can see the evolution of the over time. And time is very essential here in planning. Planning decisions are taking a lot of time very often. That's why we have challenges in delivering housing targets and environmental targets. So from our experience working with local authorities, if we can save up to 80% of the time in analysis, they can focus on actual delivery. And one of the local authority more recently said that if they were not using this, the alternative would have been having a 20-year process of doing things manually.
Yes, and I think there's even that cost saving of people's time as well. If you're looking at the amount of time that goes into making these decisions, especially with local authority and governments, it can take a significant amount of time, and having data that can actually help accelerate decision making is better, because there's much better effective use of resources, funds, cost of labour, etc. I say for many people maybe watching in the room and also maybe watching at home, I think it'd be interesting to know, you mentioned regulation there, you know, aviation and how this speed of change within aviation in terms of new technologies coming out. It's nearly a sense of regulation can't keep up, and you're kind of working with some clients and you're doing your trial with some local authorities that obviously have to adhere to certain policies, procedures and regulations. How do you navigate a kind of environment that maybe is developing quickly, but the regulation isn't developing as quickly to meet it? So it must be quite tricky to try to bring an innovation into that, especially when you're analysing arrays of sets of data.
Yes, I think usually innovation kind of prepares the way towards the regulation. I saw that some years ago when I was designing some of the first digital plans. There was no like very specific standard for that, but what I was doing was trying to kind of collect the requirements of the authorities. So what are the tick boxes they need to complete so they can get their plan made? And I think the same way we're approaching these as well now. So what are the things that a vertiport developer or operator need to prepare to receive planning permission? What are the things that the local authority needs to demonstrate in terms of environmental impact assessment or health impact assessment? And then also integrate a risk factor element to it. So what are the risks that they want to avoid doing that? So looking at how the system is right now, combined with what are the other considerations and constraints that they will need to deliver. For instance, you don't want the new vertiports or air corridors to kind of create new risks for the local population. So avoiding very crowded areas or avoiding areas that are challenging from a weather or climate perspective is quite essential.
Perfect. Listen, I would love to keep talking to you, but we're actually out of time. But for anyone who wants to get in contact with Silviu, learn more about optimal cities, you can reach out to the team at Connected Places Catapult, or if you can see it on the screen either at home or here, Silviu's contact details are up there. So silviu@optimalcities.com. And if you've liked what you heard and you want to share some of the stuff you've heard in today's talk, you can do so at #CP Summit 24. Silviu, thanks so much. And
thank you very much, David.
Brilliant.